Well, hey everybody, it's great to see you guys all again. It's Brent and Anna on Catamaran Impy, your friendly catamaran. We're busy cruising in the Whitsundays at the moment. It's absolutely spectacular. Really enjoying our time in Australia, and Australia's been good to us through this whole COVID season. That we're here to talk about our teak deck. Now guys, I'm not a carpenter by trade, and I'm certainly not an expert in wood technology. I've done a lot of research. I'm a fairly practical person, so I do research on these things and then I put it into practice. What we have on our deck, 1 or 2 or 3 planks just were not matching the planks alongside. They were wearing a bit more than the other planks alongside them. So I looked on YouTube and there were just no videos to show me how to actually strip an individual plank out of a deck and put another piece in and get it to feather in and tie up nicely to the general area around it. After much chatting with my cousin Kent at Just Catamarans, with the guys who supplied me the actual teak, I had to determine what width, lengths and thickness of teak I needed to order in order to place it. And to do that meant I had to remove a little piece of the deck and to use a depth gauge just to work out what sort of thickness I was going to be working with. Our particular teak deck comes out with little chamfers or recesses cut into it, and they lay these side by side and they staple them from underneath, and that's how they basically form the deck area. Replacing it, and in discussion with the teak supplier, he suggested the best way is not to cut those little recesses in, but just to go with square planking. You will notice that I do have a recess cut into the teak that I'm placing, but it's far easier to do it without that recess, because wood being wood, it's difficult for them to get those lines perfectly straight. Right guys, so this is basically how we did it. I'd love to hear in the comments section from people who are actually experts in teak decks. This seems to be working very well. I'm very happy with the result that I've managed to get out of it. Anna and I are enjoying our living area here. And okay guys, the first thing is let's look at the tools and the materials we're going to need for the job. Okay, so the first step is, today I'm going to use gloves. Last time I didn't use gloves. Make sure your gloves match your clothes in color, because otherwise you won't look cool while you're doing this job. Okay, I've also got some tools which I managed to get at one of my favorite chandleries in the world. This is actually a caulking, it's actually specifically for caulking. It's by Teak Decking. It's literally for pulling out and gouging the caulking out between the wood. Okay, so that's our teak deck there, and I've replaced these 2 planks already. So now I'm going to replace this plank. These ones are all good, these 2 are good, and the rest of the deck is good. This will all fade in. This is because I've sanded it. Right, so I'm just going to start this off a little bit by cutting into the caulking here really carefully. Get a section removed, so I'm going on both sides. I don't want to damage the wood on either side. I don't mind damaging the one that's going to come out. Well, it's going to get damaged anyway because I'm going to have to smack that out. So I'm just making an entry point for this tool to be able to penetrate. I like to use a vacuum cleaner. Most of this out, I'm going to start removing this wood. So I've got a hammer, quite a beefy one. I've got a long screwdriver because I like to use this, and I've got a chisel. It's not a very nice thing to have to do, To further complicate it, this particular one has little nails, and these are U-shaped nails that go from one plank to the other plank. And so I've got to be careful that I don't tear the plank next door when I remove these. I'm just going to get a place to start this all from. Right, now you can actually see the deck under there, and we'll just keep doing this. Just take our time on this, otherwise we damage the planks alongside it, which we don't want to do. I don't want to damage the deck too much either under it, although, you know, it'll always be covered. But why do damage if you don't have to? Sometimes the screwdriver actually, because it's got a blunt end, it does some of the work nicer. But the chisel just helps one to get into it. So we've got that plank out of there. It's taken me a while, and I'm being very careful, of course, of the planks next door. Now there are still some little pins in there which I'm going to have to pull up, and when I pull them out I've got to be really careful not to damage the planks alongside. I will prepare this a little bit better. It's not necessary to go crazy on it. If I can put the caulking on top of what's there already basically, but I'm going to do some more steps to clean it up better. Then we want to clean up all these little places right up into the corners so that the seeker will stick nicely to it. Using 120 grit here. It's got nice bites in it, and I'm even sanding a little bit over the long side material so that I can flare it in nicely. Afterwards I'll just polish it, so it doesn't matter if it looks a bit scratchy around the top sections. Get right up into those little corners, get the seeker to stick well. Important part of the job, this. We're going to now put some primer on there, on the edges of the wood, not on top of it, although on top of it isn't a problem because it sands through afterwards. And we'll put primer onto the edges of the new wood as well. Before we put new primer in, we're going to check. We've got this piece of wood. Now this piece of wood has a recess cut into it. I wouldn't recommend that for future. So we literally replaced that just with a normal square end. And much better to work with a square end, okay, as opposed to working with one that has this little edge in it. Measuring it off, and at its longest length, 850, so I'm going to make it 860 and trim it back. Right, that looks like it's going to fit well, so I'm now ready to start the process of bonding that piece of wood into the deck. Okay, so now I'm going to use some methylated spirits. I've got a clean rag. I'm going to clean everything up, make sure that the area is nice and clean for a proper bond. So I'm overdoing it a bit, and I will let it dry 100%. Okay, so the next thing is that we're going to mix up this primer, right? And this allows the seeker and the wood to really adhere well together. Some people don't bother with this step. I'm going to do it because I spoke to the guys that supply teak, and they recommended this is the way to go. So we're going to mix this fixed tech product called Fix Seal. We're going to mix it with a 1-to-1 ratio. The important thing is to make sure this product stands for 15 minutes mixed. I'm going to get this out of the sun in a while. I'm going to prepare my wood just because I don't want over paint. It doesn't matter if you do, if you're going to sand it back. I don't want to remove too much wood. So I'm going to prepare my wood by sticking some painter's tape over the top. Some painter's tape just so that I can paint the edges there really nicely with this Fix Tech Fix Seal. And make sure that I have minimal sanding to do afterwards. 1 DC, Fixed Tech products, high quality Teak Deck caulking sealant. We're going to take our wood that we're going to put in. I'm going to put a thin layer on here, just enough to basically seal it down and hold it. And the sides I will do after it's fully cured and been put in place. Trying to do this thin. Right, so there we are, weighted them down. I have these drums full of resin for storage on the boat. Right, so that's all set and glued in nicely. It hasn't set yet, but I'm going to be removing this, and hopefully I don't have too much of a dip in between. I want it slightly raised so that I can sand it back. So let's start lifting this all up, and it's still wet, but I don't want to sand too much of the wood away. I've got a little bit of an overfall on that one, but it'll sand out. Just a normal razor blade, and I'm just running the blade along the wood. I'm just going to use an orbital sander with a 60 sanding disc on it. Right, we'll do the rest tomorrow.